Welcome back to Even Tacos Fall Apart, a podcast where we do our best to own our stories, love ourselves, and thrive as we become more mentally stable, emotionally healthy, and physically well with each passing day. I'm MommaFoxFire, and I am thrilled to have you tuning in today. Before we dive into the topic, I just want to take a moment to express my gratitude for each and every one of you. Your messages, support, and encouragement really mean a lot to me, and your engagement means the world to me as well. And I'm so grateful to be on this journey with you. Today, we're diving deep into a topic that's probably crossed your mind more than once, and that's anxiety and balance and mindfulness. Life is messy and chaotic and unpredictable and downright overwhelming at times. From navigating the daily grind of work and family responsibilities to dealing with the unexpected curveballs that life can throw our way, it's no wonder that anxiety and stress have become all too familiar companions for many of us. But what if I told you that there's a way to reclaim your peace in the midst of chaos? And that's kind of where mindfulness comes in. But before you start picturing serene mountain retreats and monks meditating on hilltops, let me just stop you right there, because while those images might be nice, the reality is that mindfulness is so much more than just sitting and chanting or repeating a mantra. It's about finding moments of stillness and presence in the midst of our busy lives and learning to be fully engaged in the present moment without judgment and without attachment to the past or future. And practicing mindfulness isn't always easy, and it's definitely not simple. In fact, it can be downright challenging, especially when our minds are racing a mile a minute and our to-do lists seem never-ending. But here's the thing. Mindfulness isn't about achieving some state of perfect calm or enlightenment. It's about embracing the messiness of life and learning to navigate it with grace and compassion, both for ourselves and for others. So, how exactly does mindfulness help with anxiety and balance? Well, for starters, it allows us to step back from our thoughts and emotions and observe them with curiosity and compassion. Instead of getting swept away by our worries and fears, mindfulness teaches us to create space between ourselves and our thoughts, allowing us to respond to life's challenges with greater clarity and a little bit of perspective. But maybe the most powerful aspect of mindfulness is its ability to cultivate a sense of inner peace and resilience in the face of adversity. By learning to anchor ourselves in the present moment, we can better weather life's storms and find moments of joy and gratitude, even in the midst of hardship. So buckle up, grab your favorite beverage, and get ready to explore how mindfulness can be your secret weapon for staying sane in an insane world. Whether you are a seasoned mindfulness practitioner or a curious newbie, there's something for everyone in today's episode and conversation. So sit back, relax, and let's dive deep into the transformative power of mindfulness for anxiety and balance. Let's go. It looks like it's working. Yay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Mental Health Monday here on Even Tacos Fall Apart. I hope that you are doing fantastic. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving holiday. We are back at it today. I'm really excited for tonight's conversation. We're going to be talking about mindfulness for anxiety and balance. And some of y'all know that I struggle with anxiety, so I'm really super looking forward to any tips and tricks that we can take out of this. And I have a wonderful guest joining us today, Urvi Shah. Urvi, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm so excited for this.
Absolutely. A little bit about Urvi. Urvi's a spiritual teacher and mindfulness coach focused on helping clients live a life filled with balance, joy, and peace. She's the founder of Inner Serenity Life Coaching, a business she started in 2020. And since then, she has transcended her own spiritual journey to finally unleash her soul's gifts of subconscious readings, energy healing, activations, and intuitive readings. Urvi's deepest purpose in life is to serve other women and help them connect to their inner world, their soul, and to guide them in a balanced, joyful, and peaceful life. I have several different links for you guys if you would like to connect with Urvi in any way. She has her own podcast. I've got a link to that as well. A couple of Facebook groups, a YouTube channel. Girl, you got it all.
Yes.
you got all the links. So if y'all are looking to connect at all with Urvi, here are those links right here in chat for you. Feel free to ask them. And I am going to open up a question queue as well. If you have a question while we are here live, feel free to pop it into the chat. You can use that exclamation point Q, follow it with a question, and it'll make sure to highlight it for me so that I can make sure that we get it asked tonight. And I'm really excited for this conversation. So again, Urvi, thank you so much for taking the time. And I have, I guess my first question is, you said you started your business in 2020. Was that before or after COVID?
So I started my life coaching certification before COVID. So that started in January, like the end of January. And then when I finished it, it was April, I guess.
Yeah.
Or beginning of May. So that was COVID. That was like the midst of the pandemic shutdown. Which we all thought it was going to be like 2 weeks or whatever, right? And it ended up being like longer than that. So it's actually very interesting because I never anticipated doing my life coaching business online. I always thought that it would be something that I did in person. I would go out and like network, and since I was focused more on mindfulness, go to like yoga studios and things like that and meet people and really engage that way. And then COVID happened. I had to quickly shift my strategy to online. So I had to learn all of the online things, which I think was a journey in itself for me, in kind of breaking out of my own shell of like, really being on camera, the podcast as well, all of those things.
Yeah, man, what a challenge to start something right then. So my pre-COVID, thankful COVID moment was that I got my ex-husband out of the house right before COVID. So like, I look back on it like I didn't know it was coming, but damn, am I glad that it happened the way that it did. But what a challenge to be like, I'm starting this thing, I'm getting my certification. Oh my God, everything's different. Whoops.
Yeah.
So what are your biggest joys and challenges with what you do now?
So in terms of joy, like I really like to see that breakthrough or transformation in my clients, like when so I'll say it this way. When I start working with somebody, I already know that they have the potential to change, or they have the potential to get to the transformation that they're looking for. My goal is just to make them see that. And when they finally actually see that, it's like, for me, that's like the best feeling ever. Or even if I'm doing a healing session, like I just finished one before I got on to today's recording with you. And she said something like she's just so emotional about like how it all went, and that brings me so much joy that I can actually channel this gift and give that to somebody else and make them feel that deep love that's like already there for them. And so, and then in terms of struggles, I mean, like I said, like, I never anticipated my business to be online. So like my biggest struggles have been one was like, how do I like get in front of a camera, because I never really thought I would be doing that. And just networking, online and things like that. And so I still have my struggles with trying to like balance, now that we're not in COVID anymore, but balancing like, the actual networking part of like in person versus online, and where to kind of what strategies to use in which places.
Yeah. I mean, the business side of things has got to be a challenge, whether it's COVID or not. Like you're starting something new, you're starting a new business, something you haven't done before, and that's challenging, right? And I don't know how did you get your first client?
It was a referral, actually. It's somebody that I not worked with, but she was in the same teaching program that I was in, coaching program that I was in. And she had somebody that came to her, but was looking for somebody that was more in like spiritual coaching. And so she recommended her to me, and I started working with her. And I ended up working with her for a year and a half. So we did one-on-one coaching. She was in a few of my group coaching classes that I did. I taught her meditation, a few other things. So we did it all together. And so like she was, I guess, like my first like client that I could test things on, but like she was also like the best client that I've had.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, I want to pause for a minute because we do have a couple folks in the chat who are talking, and Bite Mark is here. She would like to know, what is your favorite poem?
Yeah, so I really like Rumi. I read a lot of Rumi poems, and like so, I don't have a very specific one that I like, but there is one where there's a quote where he talks about life. I actually have it. I can read it.
Yeah.
So it says, "Try not to resist the changes that come your way. Instead, let life live through you, and do not worry that your life is turning upside down. How do you know that the side you're used to is better than the one to come?"
I love that. That's really cool. And and
I
it's
thought it was,
true. Like, yeah,
yeah,
that's great.
yeah.
That's a good one. Well, Bite, thank you so much for asking that question. Growling, thank you for being here as well. If you have any questions, our topic tonight is mindfulness for anxiety and balance, and we're gonna get into it. so we're gonna get there in just a couple of questions. So, Urvi, what do you enjoy doing when you're not busy with work now?
So I have a dog, a Yorkie. I spend a lot of time with him. I like to color or do art. So I'm a big like art enthusiast. So I paint, do watercolors. I like to dance on my own. I'll put it out there. Like I'm on my own. I like to do like learn different types of dances and like just kind of dance and stuff. I go for walks, be in nature. Those are kind of my activities.
I like that. I mean, those all sound really great. And I am a pet person. Of course, I love my children as well, but I love animals. Like, it's one of the things that if
Yeah.
someone offers me an animal, I have a hard time saying no. It's part of the reason we have so many pets. But yeah, I mean, spending time with them can be so refreshing, recharging. It's really a wonderful thing. And then spending time in nature and spending time being creative, and like those are all things that I really get. I not so much a dancer, but I do sing enough to really annoy my children. So
Mm-hmm. I don't think I'm a good dancer. I mean, my husband makes fun of me, but like I still do it. I feel like it's like moves the energy that's in my
yeah,
body, and like I really get into a groove where it's like I don't really care, and like I don't know, it lets me express myself in that moment.
I love that. I think that that's really cool. I I I kind of I think the dance gene missed me because my sister was a ballerina for a very long time. My mom was a belly dancer. Like, it just went
Wow.
around me.
Mhm.
But that's okay. That's all right.
Yeah.
Do you have an all-time favorite book or one that you wish more folks would take the time to read?
Um, yeah. So I have a lot of books that I really like, but the one that I want to talk about is well, actually, I'll talk about one that I've like loved my whole life, which is by Mitch Albom. And why can't I remember the name? I'm gonna Google it.
That's okay. So I just there's The Timekeeper, The Little Liar, For One More Day, The Stranger in the
Tuesdays
Lifeboat.
with Morrie. So
Okay,
Tuesdays
yep.
with Morrie was the very first book that I read. I think I read it when I was like in high school, and it was like the very first book I read that actually grounded me in like some sort of spiritual way. And I still keep going back to it because there's just so many good like lessons in that book that I feel like as you move on with your life, like going back, it's like, oh yeah, like that's what it is. And recently I've been reading a lot of Michael Singer books. So reading The Surrender Experiment right now. And then he had another book called The Untethered Soul, which I absolutely love.
Yeah.
So
I haven't heard of those two, but I've heard of the first
yeah,
one.
they're really good. And then I like Gabby Bernstein as well. So Universe Has Your Back is a really good book that I've read like a bunch of times, and it's always like helped me kind of get into a more mindful place.
Let's see. Universe Has Your Back. That one, that's the Man, and usually whenever I Google these to grab a link, they pop up really quickly, but she's got a bunch of videos.
She does. I actually started following her on Instagram, and I remember I tagged something about her, and she tagged it on her wall, and I had like this like star moment. I was like, oh my god, she tagged me on her wall. Oh my god.
That's awesome. You
So,
gotta you gotta love those interactions. That's really cool.
yeah, she's just I feel like however she started her journey in becoming a spiritual teacher, I feel like that's like how I am starting my journey, and like
Yeah.
she's just a really big inspiration for me. Like, and the stuff that she says just makes practical sense.
That's really cool. Yeah, I like those. Those all sound really great, and I just posted links to all of those. They're Goodreads links. You buy them wherever you want, but I know that folks who are in Canada have a hard time with like Amazon links and stuff, so I try to post Goodreads links just so that they can get information about the book. Upsettings Cal, if you would like to engage authentically, I would welcome you to ask a question about the topic tonight. Otherwise, move on. Thank you very much. So what is mindfulness?
So mindfulness is the practice of being in the present moment. That's the most simplest way I can explain it, and that's like the way I like to explain it. So it's when you use different practices, different tools to come back to the present moment. And so often what happens, I would say like 90% of the time, we're not in the present moment. We're thinking about something in the future or something that happened to us in the past, or like we're driving and like our mind is somewhere else, and like we're just
zoned
not
out.
yeah, we're not like there in the present. And so mindfulness is bringing yourself back to the present moment. And Eckhart Tolle, who's a really big teacher within the space of mindfulness, always says like, if you're not living in the present moment, you're not living at all, because everything's happening in the present moment. Like nothing is ever happening in the past. Like whatever happened in the past is already done, and nothing's ever happening in the future because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So, which is deep. I mean, I understand that. So like when you try to break that down, it's deep, but like when you think of it from a very practical perspective, it's just being here right now in this present moment, like really engaging with what's like happening right now.
Yeah. I love that because it's just very whenever I did the interview with, oh my gosh, I can picture what he looked like. I can picture us talking, but for some reason I can't remember his name, which is terrible and happens to me all the freaking time. He was the guy from Calm. Man, I wish I could remember his name. But his thing that he talked about was just remembering that, like reminding yourself, my left foot is here and my right foot is now. And it's like, that's something that stuck with me. That was more than a year ago. That has stuck with me all this time. And you know, you're talking about like driving and stuff. My 16-year-old is learning to drive, and he asked me the other day, what is highway hypnosis? And I was like, I don't know what the technical definition is, but if I had to guess, it's where you just zone out. And immediately he got it. So like even kids get it. Even kids get, you're just not always right there in the present, you know? It's hard to do that. It's hard to be in the present.
Yeah, and I think talking about mental health, so like I dealt with anxiety for a really long time, and the way that I got into mindfulness was a way to help myself get out of anxiety without treating it from like a medical perspective. Truthfully, because at that time I didn't have any health insurance, so I was like, I can't pay for this, so like what are the other techniques that I can do? And so it's like, all right, let me try meditation and some other things, right? And so specifically with anxiety, you're so worried about what's to come that you aren't putting yourself in the present moment. And so like you're constantly thinking about, oh, this is going to happen, or maybe it'll happen this way, maybe it'll happen this way. And that's not happening right now in the present moment. Like you're creating that anticipation of something or that worry of something. And so mindfulness is very powerful for, you know, things like anxiety or depression or things like that, because it brings you back to the present moment where none of that exists. Like it's just, it doesn't exist. it's not there. And so it reminds you like, well, right now I'm okay. Right now that thing doesn't exist. Right now I can just be here and like if I'm sitting in nature, just enjoy the fact that I'm in front of this beautiful tree or this beautiful flower, whatever it may be, and take that in. And it like slowly starts to regulate your body where you're like anxiety is like fleeting from you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's really powerful, just to be able to stop something in its tracks. And I hate that we're in a we're in a situation in our modern times where if you don't have health insurance, sometimes you really don't have a choice and you have to give everything that you can a try. But what a cool thing to have something to fall back on and say, okay, well, I can't afford to get this taken care of by a healthcare provider. But there are things that I can still lean on that people have talked about. There's so many videos, there's so many articles, there's so many things that you can go and read about and listen to and learn about. And what a cool thing. On the one hand, sometimes our modern society sucks. On the other hand, sometimes it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think it gave me the choice of not going the route. Like, I mean, looking back, I don't think that I would have taken that route anyways, even if I did have insurance, because I feel like, and this is just my personal opinion, but I feel like I cured my anxiety at such a deeper level, which medicine or therapy might have not been able to get to that as quickly as I did.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are there common misconceptions about mindfulness that you often come across or hear from other people?
Yeah, I mean, I think people, a lot of things like, um, I think the biggest one is like how people think that it's a way to erase negativity from yourself or from your life, or like to remove thoughts that are not um, positive. I guess that's the best way I can put it, or like that are not serving you. Um, and it's not any like even with meditation, I think people have this misconception of like I'm going to sit here and I'm going to just like not think. And the act of meditation is not to like not think. The act of meditation is to create space between yourself and your thoughts, because it's getting back um into your like your soul self, and your soul is separated from your mind and from your emotions, and so it's creating that space. And so when I hear it's I think that like that's the biggest misconception. People just think like, oh, like I'm not going to think if I meditate, like I just won't think any of these things. And they sit and meditate and they're like thinking all the time. They're like, I'm doing it wrong. It's not right.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
I think the last one is just the biggest misconception is people confuse mindfulness with meditation, I guess, or they think meditation is mindfulness, which is right, but mindfulness is meditation, which is not right. So like there's so many different tools and modalities within mindfulness that you can use outside of meditation if that doesn't work for you.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because I would love to understand a little bit better, how does mindfulness differ from traditional meditation? And are there situations where meditation is the right thing to do, or there's a different thing related to mindfulness that you should be doing instead?
Yeah, so mindfulness, like I said, is the act of being in the present moment. So that could be with anything. So meditation is just a tool to take you there. But a lot of people truthfully are not comfortable with meditation because they're not comfortable with sitting with themselves quietly. And so breath work is another tool within the mindfulness library. So like just focusing on your breath, working on your breath in different facets is another tool. That's what breath work is. It's like sensory meditation. It's a type of meditation, I guess, but it's really working with your senses. So coming to a present moment, breathing in that moment, and then like going through your five senses, like what do I smell right now? What do I hear? Taking walks in nature is also mindfulness, just taking a mindful walk where you're just like looking at everything around you. And then there's other medical modalities like CBT and other things that are used in terms of modalities within mindfulness, but lots of different things. And I've worked with clients where they are not comfortable doing meditation. I usually start them off with just breathing.
Yeah.
Like, let's just breathe together, especially with anxiety, because anxiety is so linked to your nervous system, and breath has a direct connection to your nervous system. So like if you can regulate your breath and you can learn how to control your breath, you can actually control your nervous system.
Yeah. And CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah.
I not got in trouble recently at work. I don't work in the mental health field, but had it pointed out to me recently at work that because I work in the Navy, and our biggest client is the Navy, they use so many acronyms, and someone who is not familiar with that, who comes in cold, is like, you just used one sentence, there were 2 words that weren't acronyms, and I understood none of them. So just throwing out there, like, CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. Maybe I'm a little oversensitive to that right now.
Yeah.
But worth putting out there anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So have you ever had a client where you're doing this breath work or anything like that, and then you're like, congratulations, you just meditated? Have they ever been surprised by the change in their understanding of what meditation is?
Yeah, so I worked with a client, I want to say last year or something. She was like 90 something years old. And I worked with her over the phone. Like, it was the most bizarre scenario, because like I would have never worked with somebody over the phone. Like, she didn't know how to use the internet, like none of those things. She wasn't local to me. And so, but she was very determined to get over her anxiety with breath. And she had read something in an article that said breath work can help you. And so she wanted to learn. And so here's this 90 something woman that I'm working with and teaching her breath. And it was really profound. Like, I felt like, when we first started, like, she would be really anxious when I got on the phone. And I mean, she was also in the age where like she didn't really have anybody, so like she really just wanted to vent, right? Like, a lot of it was just her releasing and talking to somebody. But then when we would start working on the breath, afterwards, I would immediately see a difference in her, where she was like, oh, I feel really calm. I think I'm going to go to sleep now. And she would call me. I mean, I would tell her, like, we can set up these calls, or you can call me whenever you need to breathe, and we can breathe together. And like, she would do that. And then she started to like to get back into her spirituality as well. And so she started like reading the Bible again, which like was really helping her. And like, so it was wild, I think. But I think that I remember that specifically because she was so old, and yet she still wanted to work on curing her anxiety because she read an article about breath work.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, you're never too old to improve on something, right? You're never too old to learn a new technique. Just like you're never too young to, in some sort of age appropriate way, learn something that's going to help you. I think that's really
cool. And I think for her, she was taking medication for a long time, and the medication, because she was so old, was causing her a lot of issues, side effects, and things like that. And so she wanted to take a more natural route. And so she found this article that she read in a magazine, and then somehow she found me, and we started working together.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that. Yeah, yes, CBT can also mean something else entirely. Could be thought of as therapy similar to acupuncture. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, okay. We're gonna get back on topic here. So we've talked a little bit about anxiety specifically, but can you explain the connection between mindfulness and just emotional well-being, and how that kind of contributes to overall mental health, aside from specifically anxiety or specifically depression or anything like that?
Yeah. So mindfulness, like I said, when you're getting into that present moment and you're tapping into that space within yourself, there's a direct correlation with spirituality as well. And so you're tapping into your soul, right? And so, and I'm trying not to get too heavy here with like this explanation so I don't lose people, but you're tapping into your soul. And so at that moment in time, what starts to happen is that, well, a few things. You start to realize that life is very different because you weren't in this space. But the main thing that starts to happen is you start to realize that you're observing your emotions and you're observing your thoughts. And so the Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, he explains this really well, and he kind of gives his example as well, also in the surrender experiment, where he starts to meditate, and he speaks about it as like there's this other like entity living in me, or like this other voice that's living in me, which is his emotional and his mental self, and he is like observing this playing out like a movie in his life. And so you start to realize like, hey, like I'm not these emotions. I'm not these thoughts. These things are happening to me, but like I'm not them. And so that brings up the thought of like, so if I'm not them, then who am I? And can I control them, or can I choose what I think and what I feel? Which you can. And so meditation is a great tool to like get you to be in that space. But then once you are in the like you start to realize like, okay, now I'm like, I know that I'm not this. I know that I'm soul. You start to tap into that spirit realm where you can really just kind of manifest whatever you want. And so it's a beautiful space, I think.
Yeah, I mean listen, you can get as heavy as you want on this one because this is the long format of a podcast, right? So it's one of those things that we can go
Absolutely.
a little bit deeper and everything. But now you talk about spirituality, and I know that you're talking about someone reading the Bible earlier, and are there specific religions that this ties into, or is it just generally however you self-identify in a religion, you can tie it to mindfulness?
Yeah, so in terms of spirituality, like spirituality and religion are two separate things. I think religion is a part of spirituality, but spirituality is a bigger bubble outside of it. And so to boil it down, spirituality is really just the journey that you're taking to identify yourself. And when I say yourself, it's your soul. Like really understanding your soul, the wisdom that's in your soul, and then connecting to that higher source, power, God, whatever you call it, universe, and creating that connection. And that could happen in any sort of way, with any religion, without a religion, with a religion, and without a religion. Like, you know, I grew up as a Hindu and I still practice Hinduism, but my spirituality is very different from my religion. Like when I'm in my spiritual zone, I'm connecting and channeling messages, especially and through my readings. I'm not practicing anything that like Hinduism has taught me. It's like well beyond it. So, and mindfulness is a tool to get you into that space of like, how do you tap into, and how do you identify yourself, but how do you tap into that space where you're connected to source energy at all times?
Mm-hmm. I think that that's a really important thing to distinguish also, because you don't have to be in a certain religion. That's why I asked the question. It's just like, I don't want people to think, oh, I have to be Christian, oh, I have to be Hindu, oh, I have to be this or that or anything like that. You don't have to be anything to benefit from mindfulness, right? It's something that no matter how you identify in that religion space. And for reference, I was raised Baptist. My grandfather was a Church of Christ preacher, and now I am a member of the Satanic Temple. So like, I'm all over the place. So if I can benefit from mindfulness, you can too.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the same with I want to say with spirituality, right? It's not about. I think when you become spiritual and you're on your spiritual journey and you awaken, you start to realize that we actually are one and we're connected and we're not different, even though we might be practicing different religions, different whatever it may be, right? Like different thoughts, different ideals. Um, it's all connected because we're all connected through that divine source, whatever you want to call that, higher power.
Higher power.
And that higher power is channeling like this unconditional love through all of us, and that's what connects us. And so when you connect to that space, you're actually connecting to that unconditional love, which when you're practicing mindfulness and you're in that present moment, that's actually what you feel within your body. You feel that unconditional love, which you don't feel when you're not present because you're feeling the other emotions,
right?
The anxiety, the sadness, the despair, the worry, the anger, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a perception that mindfulness is primarily for those who are already mentally well off. How do you make mindfulness practices accessible to folks who might be dealing with something like severe anxiety or another mental health challenge?
Yeah, so I mean, I gave my example. It's available to you if you want it to be available to you. It does take practice, so it does take, I would say, discipline in the sense of like you have to be committed to it. It can't be like, oh, I'm going to try this today, and like, oh, it didn't work, so I'm not going to try it. Like, you have to practice it. I don't want to say religiously, but like you have to be committed to it and have a consistent practice with it. So when I first started with breath work and meditation for myself, I started with doing like, I want to say like 3 minutes a day of like meditation and like, so total 5 minutes a day. And I didn't do every day. I did, I think, like every other day or like 3 days out of the week. That's what I committed to. I was very consistent with it. And then I was like, okay, like I want to try to do more. And then I became more curious about like, oh, what is this? Like, what if I tap into like, I was starting to get into a more curious space. And so I was doing more and more of it. But like, if I hadn't practiced consistently, I feel like it would have been like, I would have been like, oh, this isn't working. And I started to notice, especially with breath work and my anxiety, that if I had a thought that came to my head that made me really anxious or something that triggered the anxiety, if I just in that moment focused on my breath and just took a few deep breaths, I was able to bypass it in a way. And I was able to then think something else that wasn't triggering or getting me into an episode of like a panic attack. So, but in order for me to get to that awareness, I had to practice.
Yeah.
And know myself for that. And that's what the practicing is for.
Yeah. I feel like you also are a great example of I started this because of my anxiety. And, now I help other people with their anxiety. And you've got all these great examples of helping a 90-year-old and having someone who was referred to you that you got to try everything with. So I feel like even though there is that perception out there sometimes that, you have to kind of be a little bit better off mentally to really benefit from mindfulness, there are plenty of examples out there of folks who leaned on mindfulness to get them to a place where they were feeling a little bit better. So that's heartening to me, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's probably the one practice that you don't have to be in like a good mental space because it has nothing to do with your mental space, to be quite honest. Like it really has to do with like you practicing, like let's say if we're talking about breath, like you just knowing like this moment I can just take a deep breath and I'll be okay. And then giving yourself that time and space to like figure out the next step from there.
Yeah.
And so it's like if we were sick or we're coughing and we go and reach for a cough drop, right? Like we know the cough drop's going to help us from passing up this cough. It's the same thing. It's like using that tool of breath, like something that's like with us at all times until we die, and just using it as like our medicine for that moment in time, and then like practicing it even more and making that muscle stronger over time.
Yeah. And it's true, you do have to be in a pretty good headspace to do some of the other things that are like recommended by a therapist. And if you're talking about cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the things around that is reframing. You try reframing when you're in a super depressed episode. Like, it's hard. But breathing, you're already doing. It's something that's already there. It's something that you can kind of lean on to say, it doesn't matter that I'm having a really terrible, awful mental space right now. I can do this and kind of move through my day.
Yeah. And I would say with meditation, it's probably the same. Like if you're not in a good mental space, it's probably very uncomfortable to meditate because you're quieting. It's like sitting in a quiet space, right? And like if you're mentally not clear, all you hear is that mental chatter, which makes you feel even more crazy than when you started. And so meditation might not be the first thing you try, but definitely breath work or definitely just pausing and taking a few breaths. Exhaling longer than you inhale so you can really calm your nervous system down and you don't go into that fight or flight mode.
Yeah. In the context of mindfulness for anxiety, can you provide some insights on how it helps your clients become more aware of their thought patterns and their responses to those thoughts?
Yeah, so it's bringing an awareness. So like with meditation, the first thing that happens is that you start to really understand what you're thinking. Like your thoughts become very loud, louder than when you're just, living your daily life. Like they become really loud. It's like they're taking up all the space. And so I coach my clients to say, okay, like think of them as clouds or cars. Like try to like detach yourself from them and like just watch them like pass by. And then after we get out of the meditation, I have them write down their thoughts and then practice this. And so like as you're writing them down, over time you're creating sort of data for yourself, right? Like so you're going back like, okay, well, I was thinking of, I don't know, like my dog's sick. So like I thought of my dog being sick for 5 days and like if I have to take him to the vet or if anything's wrong with him. Like that's the only thing that's been on my mind. And so like you start to understand what's actually occupying your mind. Or maybe you're nervous about something at work. Like maybe you want to take the next step at work, but you're nervous about it. You're nervous about talking to your boss about something or something like that. And so it creates these data points for you to bring that awareness. And then you start to realize, like, my mind is always thinking about these things. And then you become curious, like, why? Why is my mind always thinking about it? And then you start going deeper and deeper and you get into your emotional self. A lot of things that are stored inside of you from maybe childhood, maybe things that you never really were able to deal with. And it's like you're actually your own therapist in a way. And like you start to work through all of that trauma that's in you.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if I could be my own therapist, I think I feel like save myself a lot of money.
Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of how I did it for myself. And when you can hold that space for yourself, I think it's so different because you can be non-judgmental. Like when you, at least for me, like whenever I went to a therapist, I always felt like I was being kind of judged. And so then I would close off a little bit and not really feel safe to say exactly what I wanted to. And I feel like when you can come to yourself with curiosity and that non-judgmental mindset and just be curious about like, why is this happening? Why am I thinking about this all the time? How can I like release this? How can I reframe this when you're ready for it? You help yourself a lot better than anybody else can. Like you know yourself a lot more than anybody else. Like you can't lie to yourself. Like I mean you can, but you know that you're lying to yourself. So it's like if I lied to you right now or I lied to, the audience right now, like they would never know, but I know that I lied. So
yeah.
Um
Yeah, you can tell your therapist, how are you doing today? Oh, I'm fine. And in your head whether you're fine or not. Yeah.
Yeah.
And exactly. maybe your therapist can say, like, clearly I can tell that you're not fine. Let's talk about it for real. But you don't have to have someone pull it out of you to already know what's in your head. Like that's it's already there.
And you're just, I think it's like when you can be honest with yourself about that, like that's really when you can work through some of like the deep shit trauma that you've been through.
Yeah.
Because maybe then at that point you're like, okay, I do need to talk to a therapist about this because I can't heal it. But like you've brought that awareness that like I do have this thing to heal versus like going to a therapist and them trying to like excavate and trying to figure it out and then never coming out for like years and years and years.
Yeah. Yeah, just identifying what it is and looking at those thought patterns and looking at those kind of responses and saying, why? Why am I thinking about this right now? Why is this bothering me? Why is this situation causing so much of my head to be occupied?
Yeah.
You've mentioned, the deep breathing and meditation and everything, but are there specific mindfulness techniques or practices that work well for managing if you're in an acute moment of anxiety or a moment of high stress? Are there specific things that can help with that?
Besides the breathing and meditation?
Or if it's breathing and meditation, if you're like, that's the best thing, then that's fine. But I know that you brought those up. So maybe in addition to those, or are those truly the best ones?
I think in the moment itself, breathing is the best thing because it's readily available to you at all times and you don't have to reach over to anything. Like with meditation, sometimes like, you need an app because you can't get into the space and like you might not have your phone or you might not have a computer with you. Or you just mentally can't get into that space. But I feel like with breath, no matter where you are, like it's always with you at all times. Like I said, like until the day you die, you're going to be breathing. So in those acute situations, like I remember I used to have pretty bad panic attacks as I got in my later phases of anxiety. And um, the one thing that I would, when I was in those moments, that I would bring myself back to was my breath. I would just be like, okay, I don't want to be in this panic attack right now. So I'm going to focus on my breath. I'm going to start breathing a lot more calmly. Like, like I said, like you just, your exhales are longer than your inhales. So you do count of like, you can do like a 4 and 6 or 3 and 7 or whatever it may be, like whatever works for you. And then that like breaks the pattern of like whatever is happening inside your body because there's a lot of things that are happening. Like there's chemicals that are being passed and hormones that are being passed in those moments, like that you're going into the panic attack or are in a panic attack. Your heart is racing. Like all of these signals are happening one by one because of the anxiety itself. And like, with if you had medical intervention, you probably had medicine that would break these receptors. But let's say you didn't want to take that route, breath is the best way to break those receptors.
Yeah. And you mentioned like would you say 6 and 4, 3 and 7, or
4 or 6? Yeah. So you breathe, you inhale for 4. You can hold it for 2 if you want. And then you exhale for 6. You always exhale longer than you're inhaling because that sends a signal to your nervous system that, hey, my body's calming down now. I'm okay. I'm safe. And like then that like calms down your heart, whatever chemical substances were sent by your brain, whatever signals it starts to all calm down.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of, like, there's an app on my phone that will give you a pretty picture of a flower to inhale and exhale to. There's all kinds of ways to do it. But even if you're in the middle of a forest and you're hiking and you have no signal and your battery's dead, like if that's something that you've already taken in and learned how to do, you're right. It's just right there with you. You don't have to have anything extra for it.
I mean, there's other things, like you said, like visualization is there, which is a great tool. There's journaling, which I love. If you like to write, you can do journaling, or you can do voice memos in terms of journaling. If you don't want to write, you can record your voice and like talk. But I feel like when you're in those acute situations or those situations when it's like, I need something right now, like if you were to reach over to like a medicine bottle, the medicine is your breath.
Yeah. That's great. What role does self-compassion play in mindfulness, especially if someone is seeking balance in their life?
Oh, this is a good question. So a lot. So I feel like when you become more mindful, you start to connect yourself with, I mentioned how you start to connect yourself with that unconditional love, and compassion is very much connected to that space. And so self-compassion, which is something that we're usually not taught to hold for ourselves, I feel like in society we're very much pushed to try harder and hustle, and you're not good enough, and like all of these, things that modern society has taught us. We don't know what compassion really is for ourselves. Like, we don't know how to forgive ourselves. We don't know how to have more grace, how to be intuitive, how to rest. And so mindfulness, once you bring the awareness into that present moment, you start to realize like a lot of the mental health issues that I'm dealing with is because I'm not compassionate towards myself. I've been really hard or critical towards myself. And so you start to practice things like, maybe it's a self-care routine, or maybe it's just sitting with yourself and forgiving yourself for saying those harsh things about yourself, or being critical, or like judging yourself so much. Whatever it may be, like there's so many different practices, but I feel like you get to that place of self-compassion when you can actually sit with yourself in the present moment and realize like how much criticism you've already passed, or judgments you've passed to yourself.
Yeah. I like that you brought up that we aren't really taught self-compassion, because it's very true. You're just not taught that as a kid. You're taught to self-improvement. You're taught, you got to always strive. You got to always be reaching. You got to always be doing all of these things, right? But we're not necessarily taught like, it's okay. It's okay if you have a shitty day, to give yourself a little bit of space. To let yourself just have a bad day sometimes, and forgive yourself for your mistakes. Like, that's not something that's taught very, very commonly.
Yeah, and I don't think we're taught to. I think it's the opposite too, right? Like it's kind of like there's this judgment around if you are compassionate or you hold self-compassion, you're weak. And so as a society, we've kind of pushed that away, and we kind of have this whole thing. Even with mental health, it's like we don't talk about it because we feel like, okay, we have to tough it out, or like it's not real, or whatever it may be, right? And so like, but it is real, and a lot of us are going through it, and a lot of us that do go through it know how real it is, and having that attitude of like, I just need to tough it out, or I don't need help, or I don't want to talk about it, is not really solving the problem. And so I think it's the same with self-compassion, is that when we can hold self-compassion, we can also hold that space to deal with our traumas and deal with our other emotional and mental issues, and come to a place of well-being.
Yeah. So I know that a lot of mindfulness is very self-centered, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean centered on your own self. I realized as that term left my mouth that that's not, it sounds wrong. It's not what I mean. I mean, it's self-focused. It's focused on yourself. There we go. Are there mindfulness practices that can be done collaboratively? Like, I've got 2 kids. Is there something I could do with my kids, or in a group setting, to kind of promote a collective sense of balance and well-being?
Yeah, so I do a lot of group meditation classes. I do a lot of group breathwork sessions. Just even like talking and bringing awareness around, like doing a guided visualization, and then talking together about like, what did you experience through that? Like, I love doing those type of things because I feel like we are social. We learn from each other, and somebody brings something up, you're gonna, it might have not come to you, but like maybe it triggers something in you where you're like, yeah, I feel like that too. So absolutely. And I learned meditation, and I used to practice meditation when I was a child from my parents. And so we used to do group meditations, like it was my parents, me, and some of my other cousins. We would all meditate together, and it was like the space that we had. And I somehow lost it in between because I thought it wasn't the cool thing to do. And I found it again
Nothing
when
your
I was on
parents
my,
do is cool, right?
yeah, I found it again when I was going through my anxiety. But I absolutely feel when you do these practices as a collective, our energies are actually uplifting each other. And so, um, there's a saying in the spiritual community that, like, if I raise my vibration, I'm actually raising the vibration of the collective. And so it's like the same. When you're meditating, you're raising your vibration. And so if you're meditating as a group, you're raising the vibration collectively and passing it on to other people that are just passing it on.
Yeah. I like that. My kids might murder me if I try to add one more thing to their day, but maybe we should try like a family meditation. I make them do affirmations every morning. So we have a little bowl and they pull 2 affirmations out and we do those together. And then in the afternoon we have a set of questions that we go through every day that also includes like what would you like to be acknowledged for? And um, I try to cram as much in there as I can, but sometimes they get a little annoyed with me. But maybe I could just be like, once a week we're gonna do this.
Yeah, and maybe they'll like it, and maybe they want to do it more.
Yeah. I'll add it to their chores. Like you have to feed the dogs and do the dishes and practice your instruments, and we're gonna meditate. But you're right though, like sometimes when you're growing up and you grow up with something, then you're like, this is not the cool thing to do because my mommy's making me.
And that's how it was for me. And I think, for me, it was a journey in itself. I think I had to go through the way that I went through, so I don't regret it. But I feel that I was always the one that was kind of not part of like the popular group, and I was like bullied, and like I was different. I was Indian, and there weren't any Indians in my school when I was growing up, and so I always struggled to fit in. And I think, like, though there was a very big part of me, a spiritual part of me that like wanted to do the meditation and the breath work and be in that space, I felt like that wasn't safe for me to do if I wanted to fit into like the society.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I'm going to fit into society. But then I realized that fitting into society isn't really my truth. And so I went back to to meditation and spirituality and all the other things that I do now. So it's a journey in itself. But I think that I had to go through it that way for me to actually understand the value of it, so that now I can teach other people and kind of help them through it now.
Yeah. And I think now, at least from what I've seen with my own kids, I think now it will be a lot more accepted than it was whenever, you and I were growing up. So
it's a lot more mainstream now than it was I was growing up. So
well, and kids are just, again, from what I've seen, kids are just far more accepting of each other and differences than they were whenever I was growing up, which is great. I mean, wonderful. I want our kids to save the world one day. Somebody's got to do it. I want to read this comment from chat because it's something that it's pointing out something that I think is really cool. First of all, for those who are just joining us or who have joined in the past several minutes, we are talking about mindfulness for anxiety and balance. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. But Growling wrote, there is a once or twice a week mindfulness meditation thing where I work that people can go to, so I can literally get paid to meditate. And that's something that I think that not very many people look into. Like, there are sometimes options through your work that you might not even realize are an option. My work has a whole program through this company that you can do. You can get all of these free, there's workouts, there's meditations, there's yoga, there's all kinds of stuff that not even all of my coworkers were aware of whenever I brought it up the other day. And so I highly encourage everyone, like, just reach out to your benefits coordinator or your manager even and just say, hey, do we offer anything related to this? Are there any, maybe they have some pre-recorded meditations or something, like, or maybe they have something like Growling's talking about, that is, and he says it's announced on Slack every week. So that's great. I mean, that's really cool that they're being loud and proud about it. That's wonderful. But some companies are a little more quiet about it. So I would encourage everybody to ask if there are any resources available through your work.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like a lot more companies are following and providing these tools because they understand how helpful it is. And yoga is like so mainstream now, and mindfulness is, meditation and breathwork is a part of yoga in itself. And so um, it's great. I feel like when I was growing up, I was learning it and I didn't really appreciate it as much. But now, even at work, people are taking time out to do like group meditations or have like yoga day or whatever it may be, and that's really awesome because I feel like we're um, putting ourselves ahead of everything else, which is really
Yeah.
important.
Well, from a company's perspective, like it makes you more productive. So they're getting something out of it. Companies aren't going to provide something for free that they don't benefit from. But
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
benefit from it as well as a person,
Yeah.
and then they benefit from you having benefited from that as a person. So anyway, that's probably a rabbit hole we don't have to go down.
Yeah.
How do you handle resistance from someone who might be hesitant to view mindfulness as a tool for anxiety management or for finding balance or something? Have you encountered that, and how do you handle it?
Yeah, I kind of just let it be, to be very honest with you. Like, I feel like it's not for everyone. Um, and that's okay. Everybody will find their thing for them. Like, perfect example, like my husband, like I tried to preach to him, or I tried to preach to him when I was really into it, and he never really caught on. And like, I realized like he has his own way of dealing with um, his mental health and like his well-being, right? And like he loves to go to the gym, or he loves to do certain things that are other ways of like releasing that energy, and that's great. He found his facet, and so for me, it's understanding that not everybody's going to be able to catch on to this, and that's okay. And if you're resistant to it, then my cue is not to push you into it. It's just to say, okay, that's fine. Like you don't see eye to eye, and that's okay. Like we don't have to talk about it, and just switch the topic.
Yeah.
Because I think another part of that I'll say is that when you're resistant to something, like you've already convinced yourself that it's not going to work for you. And the more I try to convince you that it's going to work for you, you're going to convince me that it's not going to work for you. And so we're just going to be at this like two like ends of the spectrum. Um, and even if you knew that it was going to work for you, like now you're just arguing with me to be right instead of actually listening to me. So it's like whatever energy I'm putting out to explain this to you, you're not going to be able to grasp it in that moment because you've already decided like, hey, I don't want to do this, and I'm just gonna argue with you on that point.
You kind of let people come to their own conclusion. If they change their mind later, that's great. But you're right. I mean, as soon as I say to you, well, the sky is purple, and you say, well, the sky is blue, I'm going to be like, well, it's not though, So, but even if I'm wrong, I'm going to look for ways to prove my point instead of ways to prove your point that the sky is blue. I'm going to look for ways that prove that the sky is purple, So that's a good way to look at it, because it is hard to convert someone to look at things from your perspective, if not impossible.
Yeah, and I keep the door open. So I've had a lot of people come to me that are curious about it, but then they're resistant, and so I just tell them like, hey, when you're ready, like here's my information. Just reach out to me if you need help, or if you need support, and I'll be there for you. But if right now is not the right time for you, then that's okay. Like whenever is the right time. And I feel like I went through that journey myself. Like I was so resistant to it for so many years, so I know like being on the other side of it, of like I used to argue with my parents. Like I remember this very clearly. I knew that they were right, but I would still argue with them because I wanted to be right. So it was like when I get into those conversations, it just reminds me like, well, you were here, so you know how it was. Like,
Yeah.
they'll find their way if they want to try this.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a teenager. I am familiar with that. I have a wonderful teenager who is fantastic and absolutely just absolutely fabulous. But can be a little stubborn and sassy sometimes. I mean, hell, my 10-year-old can be stubborn and sassy sometimes, so there's that. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, Growling. If you define blue as purple, then the sky is purple. There's all kinds of ways to rationalize your viewpoint, and sometimes just accepting what people say is the best that you can do for them and let them come around to something if they are going to come around to it in their own time.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing with mindfulness is like once you start practicing it, you start to become more open to the infinite possibilities that are available for you, but you start to understand that you don't know anything. So you should start to like really listen to other people and what they have to say, not from a place of like, I don't know anything and I like need to learn from other people, but just like to like really put yourself in that moment. I think that we grow up and a lot of us have this mentality of like, well, I know everything. Like, I know what I'm talking about. Like, I know what's best for me. And we kind of close ourselves off to those possibilities and we become very much in this like control mode, which creates the anxiety. Like, for me, that's what created the anxiety because I was trying to control everything and every outcome and not leaving it up to whatever was to happen or to unfold. If something wasn't going the way that I knew that it should be going, I would like freak out and be like, no, no, it has to go this way. Like, I would try to like figure it out. Like, how can I make it go in the exact way that I'm thinking about it? But we're so limited in our mind. And so when you start to practice mindfulness, especially meditation, you start to like learn like, oh, like there's so many ways that this one thing could actually happen, and I can actually like learn from other people and listen and be open. And if somebody's saying the sky is purple, let me just listen to them. Like, why do they think the sky is purple? Like, maybe it is purple for them, and maybe that is a possibility. You just become more curious. Yeah. I think it brings like this curiosity in you, which like really enriches your life because you just become curious about everything. And it's like that's like the excitement of life, I feel.
Yeah, I like that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So there's also skepticism around the commercialization of mindfulness. And there's all kinds of apps and all kinds of courses, and it's really kind of become this big business. So how can someone distinguish between a genuinely helpful and authentic resource and those just looking to profit?
So I started off on an app. Well, I started off by learning from my parents, but then I didn't remember, and I didn't want to go to my parents. The pride in me was like, you're not going back to your parents to learn this again. So I started on an app. I started on Headspace, but I had the free version of Headspace, and it was like guided meditation. And it was really like he would walk you through counting your breath for like 3 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever. And that's how I started. And so I would say like apps are, there's Headspace now. Headspace is like, I think, pretty expensive. Calm is also pretty expensive. There's Insight Timer, which I'm on. I have my meditations on Insight Timer, which is still for free. Like most of the meditations there are free. But there's a lot of resources, a lot of apps. And I think that you have to just figure out what's best for you. And though it is very commercialized and people are trying to make money off of it, I'm trying to make money off of it. I mean, I'm mindfulness coach, right? Like that's my business, right? So there are people that are genuinely interested in helping and supporting you. And then there's people that are just putting stuff out there that is not helpful at all. And so you have to use your discernment to figure out what works for you and what doesn't. And so I always tell my clients, like, don't buy an app just to do a meditation because there's so many free meditations. Like you can use Insight Timer, you can go on YouTube and just put like guided meditation. I have my meditation on YouTube as well. Like, there's so many free places that you can go, and you start there. And then if you feel like, oh, like, I really like this person is like really good and they have something that you can pay for, then you work with them and you get that paid offer. But like, start with like the free stuff and see if it works for you and see if their energy vibes with your energy.
Yeah. And most of the, even if they charge Headspace and Calm and those kinds of things, they have either a free trial or a free version. So it's kind of the same thing. You can try a piece of it, and if it doesn't work for you, then don't do the paid part of it. And I think also whenever you're looking at sites, just like if you're going to look for something, you see something on Wikipedia and you're like, let me click through and make sure this is legitimately the right information. Sometimes you just have to do a little bit of research too, and
yeah,
see if ask for recommendations. Like, there's plenty of, if you don't know someone who is looking, is in the mindfulness space or something, you got somebody right here. So just go into a good community that's mental health focused or mental health welcoming, and ask for recommendations. Lots of people on the internet have opinions, so you still have to do your due diligence. But
I would say that's a very big thing, not only in like the mindfulness community, but spirituality in a whole. Like, I feel like since COVID, like, everybody is trying to pass their knowledge across what's spiritual and what's not, and like, there's a lot of fear mongering going on and like a lot of different things, right? And so it's like, you really have to use discernment. And I know a lot of people, especially with readings, get scammed by people that aren't true readers, and they're just trying to scare you and like take your money from you and stuff. And so if you don't feel comfortable, like, really feel into yourself. Like, if you don't feel comfortable, like, in your intuition's telling you not to do something, then just don't do it. Like, do the free stuff first. It's okay. Like, I started off with, and I still I paid for the Calm app because at that time there was no Insight Timer, or I didn't really know too much about like who to follow on YouTube for meditations. And so I paid for the app for Calm, and now I have it for a lifetime, but I don't even use it anymore because there's so many other places that I rather go to, or sound frequencies that I use for my meditations when I meditate, that I like more than like the guided meditations now. So you have to just figure out what's best for you, because it is there. I absolutely do agree. Like, there is that, especially with COVID, I feel like everybody wanted to be like an online business person. And so a lot of people are there just to make the money, and they don't really care about your well-being.
Yeah. And I appreciate that a lot of folks everybody's got to make a living. I get it. Absolutely. But yeah, like, check out, if you're looking to work with somebody, check out their stuff first. If they're legit, they probably have some things that you can check out without having to pay money to access and everything. And then you can see if that's someone that you want to work with and everything. So we had a great community question that was sent via Twitter, and they requested to remain anonymous. They sent this in a DM. So they said, I've tried mindfulness and it just doesn't seem to work for me. Am I doing it wrong, or is there something specific I should try if I want to give it another whirl? And they didn't provide any, like, here's what I've tried or here's what I've done, but they just kind of general question. Is there something, if you've tried mindfulness in general, is there something to give it a try in a different way?
I get this question all the time. So I need more specifics to answer the question, but I'll answer it in the general form that it's in. I don't think that you can ever do it wrong. I think what it is that we get into a place of like, this person is teaching me to do it this way and I can't do it this way, so I'm doing it wrong. It's more so of like, that person is not for you, so find another teacher that's for you. Or find another way to do it, because I feel like I said, like, even with spirituality, it's a journey of you discovering yourself. And so with mindfulness, it's the same thing. It's just bringing yourself in the present moment, and that can look very different for everyone. Some people are going to be able to use meditation to come in the present moment, and some people are just not going to vibe with it, and they're going to need to like sit and breathe, like, and stare at like a candle or something. Or some people are going to have to like walk through nature and like be present with their thoughts and kind of figure out how to deal with it. So it's different for everyone, I would say. And so like you have to figure out which version of mindfulness or which tool within mindfulness works for you. But you can never do it wrong, because it's your own thing. Like, it's like your own art form. Like, what works for me and how I do meditation, or how I do breath work, or how I do various different types of mindfulness practices is very personal to me. And like, I know that that's not going to work for you or somebody else. Like, it's your self-expression.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like I'd hate to assume into their question, but I wonder if the mindfulness that they tried was mostly meditation. And
Mm-hmm.
I have a hard time with meditation for a few reasons. But, you know, maybe just try a different, you know, like you're saying, try a different tool. Whatever you have tried, try something else to help you bring yourself into that present moment. Because meditation for me, like, there's a couple things that are wrong for me when I try to do it. First of all, I have tinnitus, and so that does not bode well for sitting anywhere that's quiet. But if it's guided, that's a little better. Or if I can do something active while I'm trying to meditate. Oh, Tyrion, you bit me. You don't get pets anymore. You know, whatever it is, you can try something different. And like you were saying, you know, going for a walk or something like that, it can be something that simple too. So just because something didn't work for you doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you, or that it won't work for you in general, you know.
Yeah, and I think it's also separating yourself, that thought from yourself, because I think that judgment of like, I'm not doing it right, it goes back to that criticism. So it's like more so of bringing the compassion of like, okay, I'm going to try this and I'm going to see how it works, and bringing more of the curious energy than more of like, I'm not doing this right. Because when you're in that energy of like, I'm not doing this right, it's not working for me, like, you're only going to see what's not working for you.
Yeah. You have to resist the urge to redeem treats for Tyrion to train him to bite you. Listen, he bites me plenty. And I mean, okay, to be clear for those listening, because you can't see what I'm about to show, but like, he didn't break the skin or anything. He didn't even leave a dent. You know, sometimes cats will bite without breaking the skin and leaves a dent. He just put my hand.
Like, stop showing them.
Yeah,
stop.
He just put my hand in his mouth. It wasn't a real bite. That's all. I don't want to villainize Tyrion over here. And like, whenever he's scratching at my arm, he's not actually scratching. There are no scratches. It's soft paws, soft teeth. For what it's worth.
He just wants to be loved.
He just wants the attention. But then I give him the attention and he bites me, and then he doesn't get the attention anymore, which is what's happening right now. So he's mad at me. So he's going to be really annoying for just a little bit. So if someone's new to mindfulness, or if they are like that person, kind of willing to give mindfulness a try again if they've tried it before, what advice do you have for building a sustainable and effective mindfulness practice for someone who's new or retrying?
Yeah, so like I said, building a consistent practice with whichever method works for you. So whether that's meditation, breath work, just bringing awareness to your thoughts and journaling, whichever. And it could be a mixture of all of those, right? Like, just figure out which ones work for you first and be consistent with them. And so I think there's a misconception that you have to practice these things for a really long time. And so, for example, like, I need to meditate like 30 minutes a day for it to be effective. And that's not true. Like, you can really do 5 minutes 3 times a week to build that muscle first, and then like work your way gradually up after 3 weeks. And you know, from 5 minutes, maybe you go to 10, and then you go to 15, and whatever works for you, right? Like, it's just building that consistent practice over time. It's kind of like exercising. Like, you start off with exercise routine that works for you. You do it like consistently through the week, whether that's 2 times, 3 times, whatever it is, and then you just build on top of it. You can add different exercises, or you like modify it in ways that are going to work for your body. This is the same thing. And from there, you can start to add modalities if you feel like, okay, I've been doing meditation for this long, and breath work. I want to like try to like now really understand my thoughts a little bit more. You start to journal, or maybe you take a few classes on learning a little bit more about, what like how to understand your thoughts and reframing your thoughts, like subconscious reprogramming, like work with somebody that does that kind of work. You can like get into all different modalities from there, but I would say consistently practice it for a month, for whatever it is, like twice a week, once a week, whatever it is, and then work yourself up, and then see like, okay, now I can do more, like this is what I want to do.
Yeah. And something that short, I mean, even in a busy schedule, is something you can fit in. And we had, I think it was Elaine Belson, whenever we were talking to her, she was talking about meditating while you're in the shower. Like do something that you're already, take something that you're already doing. Or while you're driving also is another, way to fit that into kind of a busy schedule, or try something that you consistently do. Like you consistently, I mean, most people, I suppose, consistently shower, right? So if you're already consistently doing something, pairing it with something that you consistently do can really help as well when you're trying to do something new, if possible, if that's possible for you to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's a study that came out that said that if you do something consistently for 21 days, it becomes a habit. Mm-hmm. And so then it just becomes a part of your life. And so I always tell people, like, do it for 21 days, see if it works for you. And if it doesn't, change it up and do something else.
Yeah.
But at least if you practice it for 21 days, it becomes a part of your routine where it's like, oh, I need to do this thing because I feel incomplete without doing it.
Yeah. Well, it is time for our magic moment of the stream. So for the viewers who've been here before, they know that that means we're wrapping up, generally speaking. So if you have any other questions about mindfulness, for anxiety and balance, feel free to pop them into the chat while we do this part. But I have this nifty little magic wand. And if you could wave a magic wand and eliminate one common opinion or misconception or theory surrounding mental illness, disabilities, or talking about mental health, what would it be?
Oh, I'm just charging my laptop. I'm thinking about this. If I had a magic wand, I think it would be about exactly what we were talking about the question from that one person about I'm not doing it right. So I think that would be probably the misconception I want to take away, like that pressure from like when you're going to try something new, whether it's mindfulness or anything else that would help you with mental health. Like come from a place of more compassion and curiosity and try it out. And if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. Like it's okay. Like it's fine to move on to the next thing. Like you haven't failed at anything.
I like that. And it's something that it can be hard to adjust your brain to. But yeah, if everyone could understand it's okay to not like something, it's okay to not do something, it's okay to not continue something if it's not for you, and it's okay to just try stuff too. That would be fantastic if everyone could just have that kind of outlook.
Yeah, I feel like maybe, the adults, that all of us that are adults now, like I feel like we might have not had that thought available to us growing up. We were always taught to be good at something, and that competitive nature in us comes out, and so if we fail at something, it's like really heavy for us to deal with. And I feel like that might be changing now. Like I see kids now that are like, oh, I try, like my niece says all the time, like I'm trying and it's not working, so but I tried. Like, and I would never say that, like growing up. Like I would never say something like that because it wasn't available to me. And so it's really coming with that mindset of like, I tried, I'm trying. And it's not that I failed, it's just it's not working for me, so I'm going to try something else.
Yeah. I'm telling you, I'm looking forward to when the kids take over, because if they can continue the mindset that they have been expressing as everyone's growing up, they're gonna save the world. I feel like that's very true, and I can't wait to see it happen. Like, I'm cheering for the younger generations.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I think it's available to us too. I think we could change the world if we wanted to. It just takes a little bit more effort for us to change our mindset and reframe it. But I think we are coming around to it. I mean, we are talking about this, and people are starting to realize, like, okay, though I grew up with a certain mindset, I don't need to hold on to that mindset now because it's not working for me and it's not serving me for my highest good.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just posted your socials again, so if anyone would like to connect with Urvi offline, or not offline, but online elsewhere, outside of this show, feel free to click through to any of those links and connect. Website, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all those good things, and your podcast as well. And I'll just turn it over to you for a little bit, and if there's anything we didn't talk about or that you want to mention or throw out there as far as resources or anything, I'll just give you the floor for a little bit.
Thank you. No, I think we had a great chat about mindfulness. I think, so like I said, I have my meditations on Insight Timer, which is a great app. A lot of free things there, and I'm going to be creating some courses on there for mindfulness, which will be free. I'm actually focusing on creating a mindfulness course for mothers. And so that's going to be available. I'm actually going to be on maternity leave soon, so I'm expecting my first child hopefully in a few weeks. Yeah, so the best way to connect with me is through my socials, but I will have, these courses and things available for you while I'm not physically available to do any of my services or things like that. So, but I do wish everybody a really happy journey moving forward with their emotional and mental well-being. And I kind of feel like, like I started this work. Well, I started with mindfulness to cure myself. And then I started the work of like, okay, well, now I've like really helped myself. It helped me find my purpose. And I feel like if I was to say one thing to anybody listening, like mindfulness is so much more deeper than just curing anxiety or like helping you with things. Like it's definitely going to help you with those things, but don't stop there. Like let it take you on your journey of like whatever life is going to unfold for you, because I feel like that's what our purpose on earth is. Like we're all spiritual beings first in a human experience. And so if we can actually start to live our life in that spiritual way, a lot of world problems will start to disappear. And I think that's like very beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. Bitemark says, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. I learned a lot, picked up some new resources, and had a great time. And I'll echo that. And I'll just say again, congratulations. That's wonderful. And like
you.
Quick reminder, postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety can really hit. So just make sure that in your follow-up appointments that you're checking in with your doctor on that as well, because that's something that I experienced that I wish more people had talked about. And so don't feel like you're alone. Baby blues, normal. Postpartum depression, not normal. So, but
yeah, and I think
it's going to be a whirlwind time.
Yeah, I think even through pregnancy, you're going through all, I experienced it. So you're going through all different emotions, and your hormones are all different levels, and sometimes you don't know how to process these things. And so if you have the tools of mindfulness, like I feel like my toolkit from mindfulness has really helped me through this pregnancy, where it hasn't been as difficult as it could have been, because I've like grounded myself into this place of like, I need to be in the present moment. I'm not going to be anxious about like what's to come. And especially if you are going through a pregnancy and you're seeing like, a doctor, and you're going through like the traditional way of like the medical system and not like the, the more spiritual way. that some people try to do. Like if you're kind of commercial and mainstream, like most of us are, 90% of this country is, going through pregnancy, you're inundated with so much information, and like my anxiety has been triggered so many times through this pregnancy, and I have to remember that one day at a time, take it one day at a time. You don't need to have like everything planned out. Going back to my talk of like controlling the outcome, like it really has been this journey of surrendering. And so like I've gotten into the space of creating content and courses that can help other women that are in this space to use mindfulness for their journey through anything with motherhood, whether that's conceiving or being in pregnancy or after pregnancy when you're a new mom.
Yeah, man, pregnancy and new motherhood are super stressful. I'm glad that you have the foundation that you have. I hope that it continues to help you, and maybe later, like, you know, once you're all recovered and happy, blissful into motherhood a year down the road or something, maybe we can come back and talk about it again and see some examples of how it helped you. I think that would be a really cool conversation.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome. I'm down.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Urvi. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today. I really appreciated just this conversation. This was fantastic.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on the show. I absolutely enjoyed talking about this, and thank you for all the questions that came through.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, folks, give me just a minute. I'm going to disconnect with Urvi offline, and I will be right back. Stick around. And that's a wrap on another insightful episode of Even Tacos Fall Apart. I really think that conversation with Urvi Shah was just incredible, and I don't know about you, but I'm feeling inspired and empowered to incorporate more mindfulness into my daily routine. Whether it's taking a few moments to breathe deeply, practicing gratitude, or just being more present in each moment, there are so many ways we can cultivate a greater sense of balance and peace in our lives. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. As I said at the beginning, your support means the world to me, and I'm so grateful to have you as a part of this community. If you enjoyed today's episode and found it helpful, please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a review wherever you're listening today. Your feedback helps me grow and helps me reach even more listeners who may benefit from these conversations. And remember, even when life throws us curveballs and our tacos fall apart, there's always hope, resilience, and the power of mindfulness to get us through. Until next time, take care of yourselves, practice kindness, and remember that even in the midst of chaos, there's always beauty to be found. Sending you all love and light. Stay well, stay mindful, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Bye for now.